For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
Your key to financial opportunity.
Elsewhere in the country,
Chapter 10. In and of Itself. April 28th, 1985. The Wichita Eagle. Remetta desired death in shootout. Interior courtroom. Mr. Lewis. For the record, please state your name and address. Kathy Porsche, Colby, Kansas. And what is your occupation? I'm city editor of the Colby Free Press. Where is that paper published? In Colby. And can you tell me how many times a week it's published? It comes out every day except for Sunday and Monday. Alright, and this is true 365 days a year? Basically. Now please tell the court what circulation the Colby Free Press has. 3,225. Now Kathy, I asked you to look at, I don't know how Maryland's got these marked. These two boxes. One is marked Joint Exhibit number 3 and the other Joint Exhibit number 4. Yes? Have you looked through these two papers, these two boxes? I have. And would you tell the court what's contained in those two boxes? It contains stories that have already been published in the Colby Free Press. Mr. Lewis. Now I would move for the admission of those Colby Free Press papers at this time. Mr. Baird. No objection. The court. Marked as numbers what? Mr. Lewis. Joint Exhibits 3 and 4, Defendants Exhibits 3 and 4. The court. No objection. Mr. Baird. No objection, Your Honor. The court. They'll be admitted. Mr. Lewis. And if Your Honor please, I could go through each one of those and I know Your Honor has read them all as well as I have. And I could cover each and every article concerning these crimes in the Colby Free Press. I'm prepared to do that. Or I can just simply admit them and let Your Honor review them yourself. Whatever you prefer. The court. I probably have read them all already, so I don't see any point in going through all of them. I can review them later. Mr. Lewis. That was my feeling, and so... The court. Alright? Mr. Lewis. Do you have any problem with that? Mr. Baird. No, sir. The court. Mr. Baird? Mr. Murray? Mr. Lewis. That's all I have, Miss Porsche. Thank you. The court. Just a moment. Mr. Lewis. Unless the state has some questions. Mr. Baird. Yes, just a couple. Maybe I missed it, ma'am, but would you tell me what your background is for your position with the Colby Free Press? I have been a reporter for the Colby Free Press for the past 5 years, and I became editor March the 2nd. Did you have any newspaper experience prior to that? No. Did you have any formal education as it related to your position? Yes, I have a degree in English. From? Fort Hays State University. Alright, and did you study newspaper reporting, for lack of a better term, while you were there? No, I did not. Ma'am, the defendant's exhibits combined, 3 and 4, that you just identified for us as being your paper, are those familiar with the articles that were printed in those as they related to this trial, or these charges in this county against Remetta, Dunn, and Hunter? I am. Did you review those as they went to press? I did. Okay, can you tell this court, based on your experience, ma'am, whether or not those articles are accurate, fair, unbiased reporting of the events that began February the 14th, the first article and ending, I think you said April the 25th? Yes, we went to great length to make sure that we had accurate information, and we take pride in our unbiased reporting, so I would say so, yes. You drew particularity to one article, I think it was March the 28th, 1985. Did the Colby Free Press do any kind of a street survey where they asked citizens as to whether or not they felt these defendants could get a fair trial in Colby? I think that was February the 20th, in our back talk column, so yes we did. Thank you, ma'am. No further questions. Mr. Lewis. Just a couple, Your Honor. Kathy, would you agree with me that an early publication of articles by the Colby Free Press, those articles were saying that the trio in custody in Thomas County were suspects in a nationwide crime spree? Yes. And that would have included the defendant Hunter, would it not? Yes. And would you agree with me that since that time you've become aware of the fact that the defendant Hunter was a hitchhiker? Yes. And that he was not connected, to the best of your knowledge, with any crimes committed in any other states? True. So to that extent, the articles in the Colby Free Press that may link him to other crimes are inaccurate? Yes. Mr. Lewis. That's all I have, Your Honor. Mr. Fairbanks. Would you please state your name and address? Thomas W. Jones, rural residence, Thomas County, Kansas. And your occupation, please? Sheriff of Thomas County. How long have you been Sheriff of Thomas County? Since January the 14th of this year, sir. Were you elected in November of 1984? Correct. Have you had any other prior law enforcement experience? Yes, I have. And where at? I worked with the City of Colby Police Department some 8 or 9 years, and then prior to being elected sheriff, I worked for the Sheriff's Department some 3 years. How long have you been a resident of Thomas County? I'm a lifelong native, 36 years worth. Were you the Sheriff of Thomas County on February the 13th, 1985? I was. And as Sheriff, were you called to investigate certain crimes that happened in the county on that day? Yes, I was. Okay, and at some point during that day, were you involved in the arrest of 3 suspects? Not directly in their arrest, no. I was not in Colby at the time the crime supposedly happened. I returned a short time afterwards. I was certainly involved in the investigation of those crimes, though. Were you ever at the scene where the suspects were taken into custody in Rawlins County, Kansas? Not during the time that they were there. I was there afterwards, yes. Approximately what time did you return to Colby? Approximately 8:30 the evening, February the 13th. And were you advised of what had happened in Thomas County at that time? I was earlier. I was notified, actually, I heard it on the radio in the vicinity of Ellsworth, Kansas. Around a little after 5 o'clock on the afternoon of February the 13th. Once you arrived in Thomas County at approximately 8:30, did different press people contact you with respect to what happened in Thomas County? They did. Can you tell me who all contacted you? Oh, there was many of them. I can't precisely tell you each individual member of the press. I recall local news media, free press, radio stations. A little later that evening, I do recall news media from Wichita. And as I recall, possibly Denver came in. And all that took place still in the evening of February the 13th, 1985? Well, the night of February the 13th, yes. Did that continue on for the next several days, 14th, 15th of February? Yes, it did. Did you in fact do interviews with any of these news media people at that time? Yes. Do you know how many? No, I do not. Now, you'd been in law enforcement, say, at least 10 years prior to when this had happened, is that correct? Some 15. Okay, during that 15 years as being in law enforcement in Thomas County, Kansas, had anything like this ever happened in Thomas County? Not to this degree, no. Do you know how long it had been since there had been a quote-unquote alleged murder in Thomas County? Not from fact. I've heard rumor it's been some 30 years, though. Whether that's substantiated, I never did check. Okay, during the period of time you've been in law enforcement, though, you've never seen anything like this, particularly with the coverage and the media people available? No, I have not. Okay, now after the arrest of the 3 individuals, Mr. Remetta, Miss Dawn, and Mr. Hunter, were they incarcerated in the Thomas County Jail? They were. And approximately how long were they kept there? As I recall, they were either removed from the jail on either the late night of the 14th or early morning hours of the 15th. And they were brought to the jail at different times, were they not? Let's talk about that for a minute. Mr. Remetta was not taken directly to jail, was he? That's correct. Where was he taken? He was taken to the hospital. And when he was transferred from the hospital to the jail, it was several days afterwards. It was within a couple of days from the time of his arrest. How about Miss Dunn and Mr. Hunter? Were they taken directly to the jail? As I recall, Mr. Hunter was. Miss Dunn, as I recall, was taken to the hospital, treated for a wound, and then released a short time later, and transferred to the county jail. And when were they removed from the Thomas County Jail? As I recall, it was the early morning hours of February the 15th. I may be off a day, but if my memory serves me, that's about when it was. Why were they removed from Thomas County Jail? The initial removal was due to 2 phone calls that were received at the Sheriff's Department. Both were somewhat threatening in nature towards the defendants. I had opted to remove them from the jail anyway. However, upon receiving the first call, I elected to remove them just for a safety factor. And where were they moved to? All 3 were transferred to the Ellis County Jail. And was it kept a secret as to where they were removed to? Yes, it was. And why was that? I didn't feel it was necessary at the particular time that anyone know where they were, other than the county attorney. At that time, as I recall, they were not even appointed attorneys yet. Okay, if that answers your question. Okay, I'm gonna hand you what's been admitted as, already in this hearing as a Colby, I'll just ask you to identify that for me, please, if you would. It's a copy of the Colby Free Press, volume 96, number 84, dated February 19th, 1985. And what is the caption on the beginning of that? The front headline? The front headline reads, "Suspects removed from Thomas County." And in the body of that particular article, which you said was dated February 19th, 1985, correct? Is there an interview or a quote from you, sir? Yes, I see it, paragraph 2. Can you tell me what it was, please? If you want, I shall read it to you, that particular quote. As a result of Sheriff Tom Jones' office receiving several anonymous and threatening phone calls directed toward the suspects, the 3 have been transferred to other jails in Kansas, stated the Sheriff's Department press release. Okay, and if you can go one step further, Sheriff, I think there's maybe just a little bit more. Maybe I'm mistaken, but what does the next paragraph state? Paragraph 3, locations of the suspects not being released to assure their safety. Thank you. There was some concern, was there not, Sheriff, with respect to the safety of the 3 people who had been apprehended? Sir, I'd have to answer that on the initial call. There was, yes. The first call, yes, there was. Okay, now during your experience in law enforcement in Thomas County, has it ever been necessary for you to remove suspects from the jail before for their safety? No. Now, as a result of what has happened here in Thomas County, have you went to the commissioners and asked them at several different times for additional funds for weapons? Some, yes. Can you tell me what, please? We were, I believe it's something I've probably addressed the commissioners on prior to February the 13th, that we were inadequate in some areas of weaponry and radio equipment. But after the 13th, we did buy several new items of weaponry. As I recall, several Mini 14 rifles and a gas grenade launcher is the only thing in weapons that I can really recall, sir. In your experience in law enforcement as an officer in Thomas County, I think you maybe told me 8-10 years. Has it ever been necessary to search individuals before they came into a courtroom? I didn't understand the question. During the period of time, Sheriff, that you've been a law enforcement officer in Thomas County, have you ever seen a need arise? Or have you ever been involved in the searching of people before they enter the courtroom for any criminal case? Are you stating in the hallway? Yes, sir, with the metal detectors. No, I have not. Can you tell me, Sheriff, approximately how much money you have told the Thomas County Commissioners it was going to cost your department or Thomas County to complete the arrest and trial of the suspects? Mr. Baird, I object to that, Your Honor. It has no bearing whatsoever on change of venue. The court. I agree. It's denied. Mr. Fairbanks. Sheriff, you are here today, are you not, because I subpoenaed you? Correct, sir. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Baird, if I can have just a minute. What we've been talking about, Sheriff Jones, again, I'm going to ask you to identify what you're looking at, please. It's a copy of the Colby Free Press, volume 96, number 89, dated February 26, 1985. And some of the things we've been talking about, the rumors and the shooting of the suspects at the scene, are those explained there in that particular article? I think it begins there, Sheriff. I presume. Do you want me to read? Yes, please. Jones said he expected to hear all the rumors which had been going around town. When a monumental thing like the events of February 13th happened in an area like Colby and Levant, strong reactions are expected, he said. Continue, please. The rumors have started to wane during the last few days, he stated. Many people asked him why the officers on the scene where the capture took place didn't shoot and kill all the suspects, Jones said. He said he answers them by saying, that makes the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. Okay, what else, please? We don't want them totally tried in the press, he said. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Fairbanks, would you please state your name and address? Julia D. Rockler, Wichita, Kansas. What is your occupation, please? I am the lead reporter for KWCH-TV in Wichita. Were you employed by KWCH on February 19th, 1985? I was employed. My position was somewhat different. Okay, what was your position then? I was the weekend anchor and a reporter. Now, as an employee for KWCH, were you asked to cover certain events that happened in Gove and Thomas County beginning on February 13th, 1985? Yes. And when did you first become aware of those events? The afternoon of February 13th. And how did you become aware of them? I believe it was a wire story, either Associated Press or UPI. Did you then travel to Thomas County? Eventually, yes. When was that, please? February 14th, 1985. And how did you get here? I drove. And did you have a camera person with you? Yes, I did. And who was that, please? I believe that was Kevin Hager at the time. It may have been Steve Bessemer. I am not sure. It may have been Steve Bessemer. Did you begin your coverage of what happened in Thomas County on that date, February 14th, 1985? No, I did not. When did you begin your coverage? I first covered the story February the 15th. Miss Rockler, now I'm going to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as Joint Exhibit number 2 and ask you if you can identify that for me, please. This is a VHS cassette recording made at WCH-TV, which includes copies of all reports that aired in packaged form on our station. Before we play that tape, can we go through real quick and have you give me a synopsis of what's on it, please? Yes. The list that I have includes 14 reports. Report number 1 is the first story that aired about the shootings in Colby, Kansas and the Colby area. The second report shows the first appearance of the 3 defendants. The third report shows the funeral of the 2 victims who were shot after being abducted at the grain elevator. The fourth report is a profile report of Undersheriff Ben Albright. The fifth report is a report about Daniel Remetta, featuring you, his attorney. The sixth report is a report featuring concerning profiling Lisa Dunn and includes an interview with her attorney. The seventh report is a report done the day or day after the shootings titled The Levant Reaction. The eighth report is a profile of James C. Hunter, including his attorney. The ninth report is one which deals with the expenses of the criminal proceedings. The 10th report is coverage of the first day of the preliminary hearing in this case. The 11th report is coverage, I believe, of the first day as well. The 12th report is coverage of the second day of the preliminary hearing in which the defendants were bound over for trial. The 13th report is an interview with Daniel Remetta. And the 14th report is the second part of the interview with Daniel Remetta. Would you please state your name and address? I'm Lisa Showalter and I live in rural Goodland. And what is your occupation, please? I'm a reporter at KLOE. And what are your duties as a reporter at KLOE TV? I just cover about anything. And how long have you been working there, please? I was first employed August 1st of 1984. Okay, I will let you review this information that was given to us by Miss Rockler this morning and tell me if you know whether or not those items were picked up by KLOE TV. Yes, sir. It's my understanding at this time, Mr. Fairbanks, that your client wishes to enter or change his plea. Is that correct? Mr. Fairbanks. That's correct, Your Honor. The court. All right, Mr. Remetta, please stand up. You are Daniel Remetta? The defendant. Yes, sir. The court. You are the same Daniel Eugene Remetta that's charged in case number 85CR58? Yes, sir. Mr. Fairbanks is representing you as your lawyer, is that correct? Yes. I will advise you, Mr. Remetta, what you are charged with at this time. You are charged with murder in the first degree, a killing that was done maliciously, deliberately, and with premeditation, and that this act occurred on or about the 13th of February, 1985 in Thomas County, Kansas. You are charged with a deadly weapon as a gun. You are charged with aggravated battery. You intentionally touched and applied force to the person of Maurice Christie. That was done with the intent to injure Maurice Christie. And you inflicted great bodily harm upon Maurice Christie. And that was done with a deadly weapon, a gun, in a manner whereby great bodily harm, disfigurement, dismemberment, or death could have been inflicted. These are the charges that you are charged with, Mr. Remetta. Do you understand what you are charged with? Yes, I do. Have you discussed these charges fully with Mr. Fairbanks? Yes, I have. Your attorney has advised the court that you wish to change your plea from not guilty to guilty. Is that your wish? That's my wish. You do not have to prove your innocence. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand that, sir. You have a right not to incriminate yourself. That is, you don't have to plead guilty. Yes, I understand that too. Do you understand that if you plead guilty, you admit you did what the state says you did, and that you give up your right to appeal? Yeah. Is it your wish to give up these rights? Yeah. Mr. Baird, has there been a plea agreement in this case? There is not, Your Honor. Has anyone, Mr. Remetta, promised you with anything or threatened you with anything to get you to plead guilty? No. Has anyone promised you anything? No. Has anyone threatened you in any way? No. Mistreated you in any way? No. Have the services of Mr. Fairbanks been satisfactory? Yes, they have. Do you have any complaints about the way he has represented you? No, I don't. If you do, now is the time to say it. I don't have any. Do you have any complaints about the way the courts have treated you or the officers? No? Then I will ask you at this time, Mr. Remetta, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? Guilty. Alright, in your own words, I need a factual basis for accepting your plea. Would you tell me in your own words what makes you believe you are guilty? I need to know what you did. Alright. The undersheriff pulled us over, and when he pulled us over, I had the gun inside my jacket pocket, took the gun out, and as I opened my door with my right hand, Lisa grabbed my left hand. So that's why the sheriff seen the door go closed and shut, because there was kind of like a struggle inside the car. I got out of the car, and then I shot the sheriff. Then what else? What happened after that? That's only one charge. Okay, well, after that we went to Grainfield, or Levant, whatever it is, at the elevator place, and I seen a guy looking out the window. So I ran up to the window, and I shot it up. I ran back to the pickup truck where two people was getting out of it. I made them get in the back of the truck, and then I told Mark, the guy that was with me, to drive the truck away from the scene. And then what? Then we got down the road, and I made the truck stop. I killed the hostages. Then I got back inside the truck. And then what happened? Oh, then we got arrested a few miles away from there. Upon your plea of guilty and the factual statement that you have made to the court will find that you have voluntarily, knowingly, understandingly, and intelligently waived your constitutional rights and entered your plea. That there is a factual basis for your plea, and that you understand the nature and the charge of the consequences of the plea. Has your attorney explained to you what the sentences could be in this case? Yes, he has. Alright, how do you plead to count 1? Murder in the first degree of John R. Schroeder? Guilty. And the murder in the first degree, count 2, of Glenn O. Moore? Guilty. Count 3, aggravated kidnapping. The court. Now anything further in this case? Mr. Fairbanks. No, Your Honor. Alright, Mr. Remetta. You'll be removed from the courtroom and placed in jail until you can be transported to the reception center. Mr. Lewis. Your Honor, in view of what's happened, can Mr. Brooks and I have a little time to reorder the court? Yes, we'll take a recess. Mr. Fairbanks, I assume you're through in this matter until sentencing? Mr. Fairbanks. Yes, Your Honor. The court. If you would like to be excused at this time, you may. Now, how much time do you need, Mr. Brooks? Mr. Brooks. 15 minutes. Mr. Lewis. 15 minutes. The court. Alright, court will recess. The court. Now are you gentlemen ready to proceed? Continue on your change of venue motion? Mr. Lewis. Yes. Mr. Brooks. Yes, Your Honor. The court. Alright, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks. We call Okie Hopper to the stand, Your Honor. Mr. Brooks. Would you state your name and address for the court, sir? Thomas O. Hopper. Okay. Colby, Kansas. Okay. How long have you been a resident of Thomas County? Lifetime. Lifetime? Are you aware of the proceedings we're talking about today? Some phases, yes. You know what this case is about generally? Yes. Okay, and have you seen any of the news publications or anything concerning that? Yes, I have read some. Has that publication affected your opinion in any fashion? No, sir, I don't believe so. Okay, and have you spent time discussing any of this with your friends or neighbors? Yes, I'm sure. Okay, more than one friend, more than one neighbor? Sure. Okay. Very few of us haven't talked about it. Do you have any opinions as to the guilt of the defendants in this case? No, sir. You don't think they're guilty or innocent? You asked me if I had an opinion, and I said no, sir. I don't have an opinion. Okay, did you ever state to any party that you feel these people should have been killed at the farm? Oh, I could have. I don't recollect, but I may have. Okay, have you ever made statements concerning a fair trial to anyone, that they'd get as fair of a trial as they deserve here?
John Morosi's with us on Steve Gorman Sports. Aaron, Judge, and Cody.
Mr. Brooks, would you state your name and address for the court, sir? Doyle Zimmerman, Colby, Kansas. And how long have you been a resident of Thomas County? 35 years? Okay, are you a friend, relative, acquaintance of any of the victims in this case? Yes, friends. Okay, you know or knew some of the victims? Yes. Okay, do you believe that if you were summoned to be a juror today, that you could presume these people to be innocent? No. You don't believe that you could be a fair and impartial juror today? I don't believe I could. Okay, I thank you for your honesty, sir. No further questions. Mr. Baird. Mr. Zimmerman, let me chat with you just a minute, if I may. We use a lot of big words like presumed innocent and so forth. I would just like to chat with you about that for a second. Do you feel that you're a pretty fair and honest person? I hope so. Okay, Mr. Zimmerman. Do you think you would send an innocent person to jail? No.
The court.
Mr. Brooks, would you state your name and address for the court, ma'am? My name is Evelyn Zimmerman, Colby, Kansas. Okay, and how long have you been a resident of Thomas County, Kansas? All my life. Okay, and is your husband Doyle Zimmerman? Yes, he is. The man who just testified? Okay, and do you know about or have any idea about what the facts of this case are? Hearsay. I was out of town at the time it happened. Okay, have you received any information from the news media, from watching TV, reading the newspaper, as to any information? Yes. Has any of that information affected your opinion in this case, as to the guilt or innocence of the defendants? Yes. Okay, how has it affected your opinion? I would like to take the fifth on that. Okay, do you understand that if you simply be honest with this court, and you say that you feel these people are innocent, or you feel they're guilty, that doesn't mean that you're a criminal? I know that. Your Honor, we would ask that the witness be instructed to answer the question. I don't believe the fifth is appropriate in this case. I don't know how to answer you. I know what I feel. The court. Well, you can tell him what you feel. There's no crime in that. Tell him what you feel. I feel they're guilty. Okay, thank you. Have you discussed that guilt with any, your opinion of guilt with any of your friends or relatives? Yes. Have other of your friends or relatives told you that they feel they are guilty? Yes. Okay, were you a friend or relative of any of the victims of these crimes? We were friends of some of them. Do you believe that you could be one of the 12 people that would have to sit in this box? No. In determining this case, I wouldn't want to be. I thank you for your honesty. No further questions, Your Honor.
No question about that.
Mr. Brooks, would you state your name and address for the court, sir? Donald Berzer. Okay, Colby, Kansas. How long have you been a resident of Thomas County? 25 years. Okay, do you have any knowledge of the case, the basis of this case that we're talking about today? Just what I've seen and heard. Where have you gotten the information that you have about this case? Mostly from TV, radio, newspapers. Has that newspaper coverage, radio, TV affected your opinion as to the guilt or innocence of these defendants? I believe so, yes. Did it lead you to believe they did something or they didn't do something? They did. Do you have an opinion as to their guilt today? Yeah. Do you feel they're guilty? Well, I haven't been presented all the evidence that's available, so I really can't say for sure. But do you have an opinion today? Yeah, in my mind I do. What is that opinion that you have today? I feel like from what I've seen that they are guilty. Have you discussed with any of your friends or relatives your opinion as to their guilt in this matter? Yeah. Have any of those friends or relatives offered their opinion to you, saying that they are guilty or they're not guilty? Yes. Have most of those opinions been that the defendants are guilty or that they are innocent? I would say probably most of them would have been on guilty. Were you a friend or relative or acquaintance of any of the victims in this case? I knew them, yes. Okay, is it fair to say that a lot of people in this town knew the victims? I would say so, yes. Do you or did you ever make a statement to anyone that you did not believe the defendants could get a fair trial in Thomas County? The witness remained silent. Maybe I should ask the question more direct. The closest quote that I can find, from what I've been told, is that you stated that you would have to go, or they would have to go outside of Thomas County 50 miles to get a fair trial. Would that be your honest belief today? I don't remember making that statement. Would you believe, is that statement true or not, in your opinion today? That would, I think that would depend on the jury and the evidence that was presented. We have no further questions at this time, Your Honor. The court. Mr. Baird? Mr. Baird. Sir, my name is Randy Baird, and I know you've been waiting around for a while. I'm the prosecutor in this thing. Sir, you said you had an opinion that they probably did something. Yes. Well, that's not, you understand that the sheriff of Colby, Kansas just didn't go out and pick up 2 people and bring them in here and set them at that table and say, we're gonna try them for something. That's right. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Right. So it's not that hard to figure out that where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something to be heard, right? The witness nods his head up and down. You said that you heard pieces of this from the news and radio and so forth, and that's all you've heard, isn't it? You haven't heard what they've got to say, if anything, right? No, not really. Alright, now, is that kind of what you're telling us a minute ago when they asked you about sitting as a juror and asked you about the guilt and innocence, you said you hadn't heard all the evidence yet? Yes. You would want to hear all the evidence before you made a decision. You've got an opinion now. Right. But that's not your decision because you haven't heard all the evidence, is it? No. Okay, if you were asked to sit in this case by the judge and he said, take that chair over there, you're going to be one of the jurors. And you have a sworn duty when you raise your hand and say your oath that you're going to keep an open mind. You're going to leave that opinion you've got at home as best you can. and you're going to listen to those facts and evidence that we give to you, and if any of it comes from the other side, whatever we get, and then you're going to make a decision on guilt and innocence. By then you'll have all the evidence. By then you could make a decision, couldn't you? Yeah. Okay, then you would be giving the defendants a fair trial, wouldn't you? You're giving them a chance to have their say. Yeah. You hear what we've got to say, and then you're going to make a decision, right? Right. Now that's a fair trial, isn't it? I would assume so. Thank you. No further questions. Mr. Brooks. Sir, would you state your name and address for the court? Ernest S. Kistler, Colby. Okay, and you're a resident of Thomas County? Yes. How long have you been a resident of Thomas County? All my life. Okay, not to get too personal, how long would that be? 60 years. Okay, and what do you do in Thomas County? What do you do for a living? I'm a farmer. Do you have any positions with the county government in this town? I'm a commissioner of Thomas County. Okay, do you have any knowledge of the facts or the basis of the case that is being partially heard today? Nothing only very basic. Okay, where have you gotten the facts that you do have? Probably newspapers and media. Okay, has that newspaper media coverage affected your opinion in this matter as to the guilt of these defendants? I would say it has not, no. Okay, have you discussed or has anyone discussed with you, your friends, neighbors, relatives, the guilt of these defendants? No, I would say I've had very little, if any, conversation at all with friends and neighbors. Okay, you and I were speaking earlier, and I know for a fact that you were also approached by one of the reporters that is covering this matter, and I showed you a quote that you made. I'll read that quote back to you. It's from the Detroit Free Press, April 1st, 1985. Quoting you, it says, Kistler, fearing maybe too much has been said already about this. People here are pretty level-headed, he said, but everyone here has feelings for those it happened to. Families in this part of the country don't disperse. Just about everyone knows the family or has a friend that was lost. It came pretty close to our own. Do you believe that would be an accurate quote of what you said? I believe that's accurate, yes.
Your key to financial.
Mr. Baird. Mr. Kane, I called you in here today on the stand, and I wanted to chat with you. To get right to it, you were hired to go out for the defense counsel and talk to people and see if we could get some affidavits, or what people thought about getting a fair trial in Colby to these defendants in this case, correct? Yes, sir. Do you remember when it was that you started doing that, Mr. Kane? Not the exact date, I don't know. Around the 20th of March, I believe. Mr. Kane, there's been like about 14 affidavits, I think, introduced here by the defense counsel that you took, wherein people either stated that they couldn't get a fair trial or they were close to relatives or something of that nature. You're familiar with what I'm talking about, correct? Yes, sir. Mr. Kane, how many people did you talk to during the period of time you were out there? I couldn't give you an exact number. Well, I'll try to play a numbers game with you if I can here. Did you talk to more than 14? Yes. Do you suppose you talked to more than 50? Yes. How about more than 100? In that area somewhere, I'd say. Can we say you talked to at least 100 people? Around 100. And you got 14 affidavits that say they couldn't get a fair trial. That's correct. Did you get 14 people that told you they could get a fair trial? I believe I did, yes. Could you have gotten more than that? Possibly. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kane. I've got no further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Lewis. Your Honor, I'm not going to introduce any particular evidence because I think most of the evidence that has gone before on the change of venue motion also applies to the severance issue. I will make my argument to the court. I have filed my motion citing all of the usual reasons. The rather dramatic events earlier this afternoon with regards to Mr. Remetta, I must admit, change rather substantially the argument I was going to make on behalf of Mr. Hunter as far as a separate trial is concerned. So now I'm going to ask the court to give careful consideration, and at the same time, Mr. Remetta's action in pleading guilty has changed my argument to a certain extent. But I think from Mr. Hunter's viewpoint, Your Honor, the publicity that originally came out, and which I think is still there to a certain extent, is that these three defendants who were in custody were involved in a nationwide crime spree, that they had killed people in Michigan, that they had killed people in Florida, they had killed people in Arkansas, they had committed crimes in Texas, and again and again and again. You read that, and you read it in the Colby Free Press. As Your Honor goes through those, I think you heard it on the videotape. I think Sheriff Jones was quoted as saying, yes, he thought there was good reason to believe these defendants had committed other crimes in other states. And the press has a very difficult time in coming to grips with the fact that Mr. Hunter is a different person altogether than the original three people that were in that automobile that left Michigan. Mr. Hunter was a hitchhiker. He got into the car with Mark Walters, Daniel Remetta, and Lisa Dunn in Wichita on I-35 at 11 or 12 o'clock on the morning of February the 13th, 1985. Mr. Hunter did not know any of these people. As a matter of fact, when I first talked to him after I had been appointed, he couldn't even tell me exactly what their names were. Mr. Baird. Now, Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. These are facts, not in evidence. If Mr. Lewis wants to present that, he can put his client on the stand. The court. That's true. Mr. Lewis. Okay, I'm sorry. The fact of the matter is, the publicity which people have been reading has constantly referred to the trio in custody as committing all these other crimes. Now, the city editor of the Free Press testified today. Yes, that was true with the early publicity, and she thought they had tried to change that. But I think to put Mr. Hunter on trial with Miss Dunn is to tie him in with all of this prejudicial pretrial publicity involving other crimes in other states. And I don't think no matter how strongly we try to tell the jurors that they have to put this out of their minds, that they can't consider this. I don't see how you can expect any individual that has been subjected to the amount of publicity that the people in this county have listened to about this case to put that out of their minds. That's going to be there when they consider Mr. Hunter's case. So I think there is a prejudicial situation, and a reason for severance is the pretrial publicity which, even coming out of Sheriff Jones's mouth early on, and the Colby Free Press tied Mr. Hunter in with those other people. And although there's no evidence on it, I don't think that the prosecution nor anybody else is going to try to prove that Mr. Hunter was a part of any other crime spree. But the fact is, the press has tied him into it, and they find it very difficult, even to this date, to talk about the nationwide crime spree and to separate Mr. Hunter from it. And I think that if you try him with Mrs. Dunn, you put him in a situation where not only is he out there trying to convince the jury of his innocence, he's got to also be constantly reminding the jury that he wasn't part of any other crimes that she may have also been involved in. So I think that is a prejudicial sort of thing. Mr. Hunter had a very antagonistic defense to that of Mr. Remetta, but of course that isn't relevant anymore. And I would have to concede to Your Honor that Mr. Hunter's defense is probably not terribly different and terribly antagonistic to the defense that's going to be put on by Mrs. Dunn. Lisa Dunn, Your Honor, could be an important witness for Mr. Hunter, but tried together, she's not going to be a compellable and competent witness. But tried separately, and if for some reason her trial were first, and her innocence or guilt were adjudicated, she would become a competent and compellable witness on behalf of Mr. Hunter. She can give evidence, Your Honor, because I have talked to her and I've talked to Mr. Brooks. That is definitely beneficial to Mr. Hunter. I don't think the evidence is going to be able to come out if they're tried together. I think this is a case in which Mr. Hunter, in order to defend himself, may very well have to prove to the jury that Miss Dunn has been charged with serious crimes in other states. That sort of evidence is not going to be available to him if they're tried together, because I don't think it's admissible against her, but certainly the sort of evidence that helps build the defense that Mr. Hunter is going to assert in this case. And that is that he was just a hitchhiker, and he was frightened, and he got in the wrong car at the wrong time. And to do that, it's going to be necessary to prove, I believe, or at least be able to tell a jury about the other charges against Miss Dunn in Florida and Arkansas, and I believe in Texas. And so I think, Your Honor, that those two basic reasons, number one, the pretrial publicity of the nationwide crime spree, it would be prejudicial to try him with a person that was a part of that crime spree. He would not be allowed to introduce evidence of the charges against Miss Dunn if they are tried together. He would be permitted to show that evidence, and I think it would be quite relevant if he were tried separately. I think the essential difference between these two defendants is that Miss Dunn was along on whatever she did from the time that they left Michigan in January. Mr. Hunter got in the car 6 hours before he was suddenly involved in a shootout at the Roche Farmstead in Rawlins County, Kansas. I think his case is an entirely different case, and I think he would be prejudiced by the joint trial. And I would move the court, based on that, to sever those trials and grant Mr. Hunter a separate trial from that of Mrs. Dunn. That's all I have, Your Honor.
There was a very important ruling on the death penalty today from the Supreme Court. It is one that could affect hundreds of convicts on death row.
Mr. Brooks, would you state your name and address for the court? My name is Pamela Horton Curtis, and I live in Kansas City, Kansas. Okay, what is your employment? What do you do for a living? I'm an assistant to the governor and a director of his Constitute Services Office. We're talking about the governor of the state of Kansas, Ms. Carlin. Yes, that's correct. Okay, is the normal process of the governor's office in the state of Kansas to send a representative, if at all possible? Yes. Are you the representative that's normally sent? If it's different, yes. Does it depend on what you're looking for? Exactly. And you brought some paperwork with you, is that correct? Yes. Did you bring that paperwork with you? Yes, I did. Okay, is that a petition for death penalty that was delivered by the Representative Don Crumbaker on or about March 4th, 1985? Yes. And that was delivered to the governor's office? Yes. In your position with the governor, is it a normal part of your duties of your job to handle things like that? Yes, it is. Okay, and are you testifying today that this is the exact document that was delivered to the governor's office? Yes, it is. And has been kept with the governor's file since? Correct. There is a copy of the original that is in our file. Okay, is it an exact reproduction? Yes, reproduction. Yes, reproduction? Yes, it is. Of the original then? Yes. Okay, do you know the exact contents of that document? It's a petition with signatures on it urging the governor to sign the death penalty. Mr. Baird. Ma'am, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions if I may. Okay. The sheets of paper, this petition that you brought in, that were received by the governor's office in the month of February sometime. Did you receive any other petitions like this anywhere from the state of Kansas? Yes, we did receive other petitions and letters from citizens asking the governor to sign the death penalty. Phone calls? Yes. Would it be a fair statement that you received communications from all over the state of Kansas urging the governor to sign the death penalty bill? That's correct. The court. Miss Horton, do you have how many other petitions and letters and things like that came in? I really don't. It was during the legislative session, and it was not an overwhelming amount. It was an extraordinary amount in comparison to what we receive on other issues, yes. The court. What do you mean by an extraordinary amount? Well, it was not the normal amount that we receive. The court. Well, I don't know what that normal amount is. I don't have a specific number. If the court would like, I could check our records. It would take some time. The court. No, you may step down. All right, where do we want to proceed to now? Mr. Lewis. You know, it's not easy for me to get up here and say that these people can't get a fair trial in Thomas County. That's not easy because I have friends here. I have clients here. It's not something that I get up and do without having given it a great deal of thought. But I do not believe, Your Honor, that a fair and impartial jury can be selected out of the Thomas County populace, nor that a fair and impartial trial can be had here. I say this for a number of reasons. Principally because I know how the people feel. And I'm not saying anything bad about the people of Thomas County, because I don't think these individuals could get a fair trial in Rawlins County either. I know what the feeling is over there. It's quite intense. And it's even more intense in Thomas County. I think you can feel it as you come into the courtroom to the preliminary hearing on these issues. I think the tension is almost, in the air. I can feel it, at least. I think what I have here is something that Your Honor has, that Mr. Brooks has, that Mr. Murray has, and perhaps Mr. Bear doesn't have. He's from Topeka, but we all live in small towns. We all know how you get a feeling of extended community. You identify with your community out here. And as Mr. Kessler testified, people don't leave. There's generation after generation of families that lived in Thomas County that can take you right back to their great-grandfather homesteading out here. People stay. And people identify very strongly with being a resident of Thomas County, a resident of Colby, a resident of Levant, just like they do over in Rawlins County. It's, you have your family, but you almost have an extended family in your community which gives you your identity, in which you're all, we're all very fiercely defensive about our communities. We want to protect our community. We want to protect our courthouses. We're suspicious of the people that come from eastern Kansas because we think that they want to change our way of life out here, that they don't understand how we live. And so because of that, when somebody dies, there's a feeling of loss that goes throughout the entire community. And I'm just talking about a normal death. Your Honor knows how, in these small communities, in the event of death, that people come to your door, they bring food to your house. There's just a feeling, even in the normal course of events. And then we have an incredible tragedy such as what happened on February the 13th of 1985. And I can't think of anything any more tragic, any more horrible than what happened in Thomas County that day. And I know that it affected people in Rawlins County. I know how it has affected everybody in Thomas County. Glenn Moore and Rick Schrader were fine residents of this community, and I don't think there's a person in Thomas County that doesn't feel the loss of these two people. Ben Albright, Maurice Christie, here again, fine residents of this county. Both of them had their lives tragically altered by what happened that day. And there's empathy and there's feeling. All of us have it for them. But I think they have it certainly even stronger in Thomas County, in Colby, Kansas. Because they're your own people. Their feelings are strong. Feelings of this community are very strong. There are those, Your Honor, who have been willing to stand up and say they can't get a fair trial. And out of those affidavits, there's just two that I want you to think about. Dave Jennings runs his shop. He's a good resident of this town. He signed an affidavit indicating that he didn't feel that there could be a sort of trial that the Constitution requires. I've talked to him, and I know he feels that way. You know who he is, and you know his position in the community, and you know it wasn't easy for him to put his signature on that. Don Hazlitt, a realtor, well-known individual, told me he wished he hadn't signed it because of his, it could cost him some business. But that's how he believed. That's how he felt. But this community was so outraged at what these defendants are alleged to have done that they couldn't get a fair trial. Those are two rational, fair-thinking people, both of whom are businessmen, both of whom put their names on the line because they know what the Constitution requires. They know how terribly important it is that our system of justice work. I'm not talking about the guilt or innocence of these people now. We're talking about their right to a fair trial before 12 people who don't feel any pressure, who haven't been overcome by media publicity, who can decide the case fairly and honestly without feeling pressured from the community. I would remind Your Honor that these defendants had to be moved from this jail to an undisclosed source to protect them. This community was so outraged that the sheriff believed these people's lives were in danger if they stayed here. And they moved them. And it was a long, long time. Now, I'm not sure whether there's general knowledge as to where they've been kept, but it was quite a while there that no one was to say where these people were taken. I think that is a fact. You heard Sheriff Jones say, or you heard him quote in the paper say, "Many people have said, why didn't you save us all some trouble? Why didn't you just kill those people out there in the Roche farmyard?" Many people, he said that to him. Many people have said that to me. There are a lot of people, it's kind of scary actually, who feel that the trial should have ended right there on the Roche farmyard. That these people deserve as fair of a trial as the victims got. And that isn't the sort of trial that the Constitution requires. The pre-trial publicity, Your Honor, has been absolutely overwhelming. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've never been involved in something where I had reporters running at me with open clipboards and wanting me to write something down. People shoving microphones in my face, television cameras. It's been quite overwhelming. And I've had clients come into my office from Thomas County and say, "You're going to cost me a lot of money by defending that guy." You saw the bit on television coverage about how Thomas County wasn't going to be able to spend its money on its schools and its hospitals because of these people. So I think that is the dual factor that is pressuring, that has to be in the mind of anybody from Thomas County that sits on a jury. This is going to take money out of my pocket, or out of my dad's pocket, or out of my friends' pockets. And these people shouldn't be here asking for this. Given the type of community that we're talking about here, and is the type of community I live in, so I feel comfortable in talking about it, the publicity, I don't know what the impact is, but it's got to be 10 or 15 times greater on everybody in Thomas County than, for instance, had this crime happen in Topeka, where Mr. Barrett is from. Because people in the cities, in the first place, they don't know everybody. And in the second place, violent crimes happen frequently. And if you watch the television from Wichita, the number of murders that takes place in that city, people become hardened to this sort of thing in the cities. They don't out here. It doesn't happen to us here in northwest Kansas. I have a client in Atwood who is an elderly lady, and she was telling me after, "Mr. Baird, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the witnesses and testimony that haven't testified. Let's direct ourselves to the evidence and issues that have been presented." The court: "Yes, I hope so." Mr. Lewis: "Okay, the only point I want to make is, there hasn't been a homicide in Thomas County for a long time. There hasn't been one in Rawlins County for a long time. So the impact is just simply so much greater than any place else in the state of Kansas, because things don't happen to us like this out here. And when they do happen, the feeling of extended community, I think, makes everybody in Thomas County feel like, not everybody, but the majority of them feel a personal loss. And if you feel a personal loss, you shouldn't be trying to determine the guilt or innocence of the defendants." The court: "Well, I can assure you, gentlemen, that this matter has been on my mind for quite some time, and I've probably done more research in that than anybody involved in this lawsuit. I'm going to deny the change of venue, and I'll comment somewhat why I'm going to. I agree with our Constitution, federal and state both, that requires that these trials be, mandates in fact, that these trials be held in Thomas County. And I'm certainly going to abide by it, both the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Kansas. You've asked me to change the venue, and I don't believe there's any place in the state that I could change it to that these people, or the people in that county, would not have heard what happened. Certainly all the statements made by Mr. Remetta has been published and placed on TV. and I've read numerous reports about what he has said. It appears, from my reading of all the stories in the newspapers, that they have been factual. I don't believe there's been any attempt by the media or the papers or the stories, the TV, to try to change anybody's opinion about what the outcome, or try to influence what the outcome of the trial ought to be. There was some mention in one of the arguments about the cost of Thomas County. It doesn't make any difference where the trial is held. Cost is going to be the same to Thomas County, regardless. I presume 50 years ago, if something like this had happened in Thomas County, without radio and TV and all the media coverage that we normally get and these kind of things at this time, we could have moved the trial 100 miles, and probably nobody would have heard about it at that time. But I'm telling you, the media coverage that we have here now, everybody has heard about it. My son called me from Anchorage, Alaska, the night this happened. I think the evening of the 13th of February, and asked, "My goodness, Dad, what happened in Thomas County? I saw this on TV in Anchorage, Alaska." I had friends in Hawaii that saw it the same night, wondering what had happened in Thomas County. My goodness. So there just isn't any place that I know of that you could move this to in the state of Kansas. At any rate, that's some of the reasons why I've refused to change the venue in this particular case. I can assure you that the prosecution is not going to be able to do anything unfair in this matter, and neither are the defendants. As long as I'm sitting here, I hope. So the motion for change of venue will be denied. Anything further? Mr. Lewis. I have nothing further, Your Honor. Mr. Brooks. To pester the court one more moment, and maybe this is not even the appropriate time. The other day that you denied a motion where we made for expert services, I lost my notes, so I did not draw a journal entry. But I asked the court if the court would allow me the funds, I guess you would say, to transfer my client to the Shawnee County Jail for approximately a week for that examination. If I can acquire the funds in the exact amount, I mean, I have a doctor possibly for the week of the 27th of May. The court. I've already heard all your arguments concerning this particular question, and I denied it once, and I'm certainly going to deny it again. I'm not going to change my mind. And so I will re-deny that request this time, and I'm not going to allow any funds to be spent to haul Lisa Dunn down to Topeka to spend a week or two down there talking to a psychiatrist. Mr. Brooks. Yes, Your Honor. The court. All right. Anything further? Mr. Brooks. Nothing, Your Honor. Mr. Lewis. I have nothing further. The court. Any other motions at this time? Mr. Baird. I don't think so. Mr. Murray. No, Your Honor. The court. As you all know, I will not hear any further motions concerning this matter. We're going to try this case on June 4th, beginning at 10 o'clock. If there's nothing further, court will be adjourned. I'm Cory Zimmerman, and this is Spoon River Gothic, Season 2. Death Rides the Highway, a thrill ride fueled by murder and terror. Think, feel, and understand the world around you with Spoon River Gothic Podcast, because we go where the others don't. We dive deeper. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. It means more than you know in this cutthroat world. And until next time, keep a vigilant eye over your shoulder, because there's always more to the story.
Death Rides the Highway.